This is a real event for 4.5 millennia. It has dominated the Giza plateau, a silent, brooding monarch of stone and sand. We call it the Great Pyramid of Khufu. And for centuries, we have told ourselves a simple, comforting story. It is a tomb. An extravagant, geometrically perfect headstone for a long-dead pharaoh. But a tomb is a place of endings, a repository of silence and decay. The evidence, a growing collection of baffling, technologically incongruous data, suggests we have been profoundly wrong. The Great Pyramid is not a monument to death. It is a machine of incomprehensible purpose. And after an aeon of dormancy, it is beginning to stir. The official narrative, cemented in the public consciousness by generations of Egyptologists, is straightforward. It was built around 2560 BC as the final resting place for the 4th dynasty pharaoh, Khufu. It took 20 years, a workforce of thousands, and over 2 million massive stone blocks. It was once clad in polished white Tura limestone, a beacon that shone under the Egyptian sun. This story, while grand, is riddled with inconsistencies that have been systematically ignored or downplayed. The first and most glaring issue is the very reason for its supposed existence, the body of the pharaoh. It has never been found. Inside the pyramid's heart lies the so-called king's chamber. This dark, rectangular room is constructed entirely of massive, red Aswan granite blocks. Some weighing up to 80 tons, quarried from over 500 miles to the south. At its center sits a large, granite box, referred to as the sarcophagus. But this is not the ornate, hieroglyph-covered coffin one would expect for a divine king. It is a coarse, unadorned, and lidless coffer, too large to have been carried through the chamber's passageway, meaning it must have been placed there as the pyramid was being built around it. There is not a single, verifiable hieroglyph within the king's chamber that names Khufu or details his burial. The only mention of his name was found in a small, sealed relieving chamber above, scrawled in what appears to be red ochre paint. A piece of graffiti that many researchers now believe was a modern forgery, created to bolster the tomb theory in the 19th century. No mummy, no canopic jars, no funerary goods, no inscriptions. For the most elaborate tomb ever conceived, it is conspicuously empty of everything that defines an Egyptian burial. This emptiness forces a re-evaluation of the structure's purpose. If not a tomb, then what? To answer that, one must look at its design not as architecture, but as engineering. The precision is legendary, but the reality is staggering. The base, covering 13 acres, is level to within less than an inch. The 4 sides are aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal directions, off by a mere fraction of a degree, an accuracy modern builders would struggle to achieve. The stones, weighing an average of 2.5 tons, are cut with such exactitude that a razor blade cannot be inserted between them. Mainstream archaeology proposes ramps and sheer manpower, but these explanations buckle under the weight of the physical evidence. The sheer number of blocks that would have had to be quarried, dressed, transported, and set in place one every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day for 20 years, strains credulity to its breaking point. The interior is even more perplexing. It is a network of precisely angled shafts, galleries, and chambers that seem to serve no funerary or ritualistic purpose known to Egyptology. The Grand Gallery, a magnificent, corbelled hall that ascends toward the king's chamber, is an acoustic marvel. Its walls feature a series of 27 niches on each side, their function unknown. The floor is flanked by 2 ramps with slots cut into them, as if to hold something in place. The entire structure feels less like a hallway and more like a functional component of a vast apparatus. Then there are the shafts. 2 shafts, each about 8 inches square, extend from the king's chamber and exit the pyramid on the north and south faces. Initially dismissed as ventilation shafts, this theory collapsed when 2 more were discovered in the lower queen's chamber. These lower shafts did not reach the outside, they were sealed. In 1993, a German robotics engineer, Rudolf Gantenbrink, sent a small robot named Opio 2 up the southern shaft of the queen's chamber. After a journey of 200 feet, it was stopped by a small, limestone door with 2 copper handles. The world of Egyptology was stunned. This was not an architectural feature, it was a deliberate barrier. What lay behind it? For nearly a decade, the question hung in the air. In 2002, a new expedition, broadcast live around the world, drilled a small hole through this Gantenbrink door. They pushed a fiber optic camera through and found not a chamber, not treasure, but another, rougher-looking blocking stone just inches behind the first. The mystery had only deepened. In 2011, the Jetty project, a more advanced robotics team, explored the shaft again. The robot managed to maneuver its camera around the first door, confirming the second blocking stone. More tantalizingly, it discovered faint red hieroglyphs painted on the floor of the tiny chamber between the 2 doors. Marks that had been unseen for 4,500 years. Their meaning remains a subject of intense debate. But the robot discovered something else in the northern shaft of the queen's chamber, another identical limestone door with copper fittings. The pyramid was symmetrical, it was designed, and it was keeping secrets. These physical anomalies, while profound, were only the beginning. The true paradigm shift began with the application of modern physics to the ancient stone. In the late 20th century, independent researchers like Christopher Dunn, an engineer with a career in high-tech manufacturing, proposed a radical theory. He argued that the Great Pyramid was not a tomb but a power plant, designed to harness the natural vibrations of the earth and convert them into energy. This theory, once dismissed as fringe pseudoscience, began to find unsettling corroboration in scientific studies. Dunn's hypothesis centered on the unique materials used. The S1 granite of the king's chamber is rich in quartz crystals. Quartz is piezoelectric, meaning it generates an electric field when subjected to mechanical stress. The immense weight of the pyramid pressing down on the chamber would create precisely this kind of stress. He proposed that the subterranean chamber, a rough-hewn cavern deep in the bedrock below the pyramid, was part of a system to feed a chemical solution into the pyramid, while the shafts were used to introduce specific gases, perhaps hydrogen and hydrated zinc, creating a chemical reaction. The pyramid itself, he argued, would have acted as a massive resonator. The earth produces a constant hum, a subaudible vibration known as the Schumann resonance. Dunn theorized that the pyramid was built to the precise dimensions needed to amplify this natural frequency, causing the entire structure to vibrate in sympathy. This vibration would be focused on the granite king's chamber, causing the quartz crystals to generate a significant electrical charge, a process he called coupled oscillation. The Grand Gallery's mysterious slots, he suggested, held acoustic resonators that tuned the sound to a precise frequency. The energy produced could then have been beamed from the apex of the pyramid, which was likely once topped by a solid gold capstone, an excellent conductor. For years, this was just a theory. But in 2015, a project called Scan Pyramids began a new, non-invasive investigation. An international team of scientists from Egypt, France, Canada, and Japan used an array of advanced technologies: muon tomography, infrared thermography, and 3D simulation to peer inside the pyramid without disturbing a single stone. Muons are subatomic particles created when cosmic rays strike the Earth's atmosphere. They rain down constantly, and while they can pass through hundreds of feet of stone, their trajectory and energy can be measured to detect voids or areas of different density. The initial results were startling. Infrared scans revealed distinct thermal anomalies on the pyramid's surface. Several blocks, particularly on the eastern face, were several degrees hotter than their neighbors, suggesting internal cavities or the movement of air. But the most significant discovery came from the muon detectors. After months of data collection, the team announced the discovery of a massive, previously unknown void, located directly above the Grand Gallery and measuring at least 100 feet long. It was a space comparable in volume to the gallery itself. It was not a chamber or a passage in the conventional sense. The data showed it as a deliberate, engineered vacuum in the heart of the structure. The official announcement was cautious, referring to it simply as the Scan Pyramids Big Void. Its purpose was, and remains, a complete mystery. Was this the missing piece of the power plant? A collection chamber for the gases Dunn hypothesized, or something else entirely? The discovery lent enormous credibility to the idea that the pyramid's internal structure was far more complex and functional than previously believed. Then, in 2018, another team of physicists published a paper in the Journal of Applied Physics that sent a shockwave through the community. Using theoretical models, they demonstrated that the Great Pyramid concentrates electromagnetic energy. Their analysis showed that in a resonant state, the pyramid could focus electromagnetic waves, such as radio waves, into its internal chambers and into the space directly beneath its base. The King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the unfinished subterranean chamber were all focal points. The pyramid was not just a passive structure, it was an active lens for ambient energy. The scientific paper confirmed, in the dry language of physics, what the theorists had been shouting for decades. The pyramid was designed to interact with energy in a highly specific and sophisticated way. This is the background, the slow accumulation of evidence that chipped away at the old story. And it is against this backdrop that the new, terrifying events began to unfold. Quietly at first, then with an undeniable and escalating rhythm. It started with the sound. For the last several years, tourists and local residents have reported a low, intermittent hum around the Giza plateau. It was often dismissed as wind, distant city traffic, or the throng of generators for the nightly sound and light show. But technicians and researchers working on site knew it was none of those things. It was a deep, resonant frequency, almost too low for the human ear to perceive. More of a feeling in the bones than a sound. It was sporadic, lasting for a few minutes and then fading, only to return hours or days later. Seismographs placed near the pyramid for geological monitoring began to register it as a regular, rhythmic pulse, a soft heartbeat from deep within the bedrock. At the same time, the thermal anomalies detected by the Scan Pyramids project began to change. They were no longer just static hot spots. They started to fluctuate. The patterns of heat would shift, growing in intensity before slowly fading, almost as if a circuit were being tested. New, more sensitive thermal imaging showed faint lines of elevated temperature connecting the known chambers, tracing pathways through the solid stone that matched no known corridor. It looked like a schematic diagram slowly warming up, a system coming online. Official statements from the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities were terse and dismissive, citing natural temperature variations and seismic activity from the nearby metropolis of Cairo. But within the close circles of the international research teams, a palpable sense of anxiety was growing. The data was becoming impossible to ignore. The hum was growing more consistent, the pulses more defined. The thermal patterns were becoming brighter, the lines more distinct. The pyramid was waking up. The catalyst seems to have been the convergence of astronomical and telluric events. Over the past year, Earth has passed through an unusually dense stream of cosmic radiation, a remnant of a distant supernova. Concurrently, a cyclical shift in the planet's magnetic field, a routine part of its geological life, reached a new peak. For any other structure on Earth, these events would be meaningless. But for a machine designed to interact with cosmic rays and the planet's own resonant frequencies, it may have been a long-awaited trigger, a key turning in a cosmic log. 3 months ago, the hum stopped being intermittent. It is now a constant, a low-frequency thrum that blankets the entire plateau. It registers at a steady 4.3 Hz. A deep, subaudible bass note that causes a subtle, vibrating pressure in the sinuses and chest. Birds no longer roost on the pyramid's slopes. The stray dogs that once roamed the area have all vanished. The air itself feels different, charged with a static electricity that makes the hair on one's arms stand up. The effect is most pronounced at the pyramid's peak. Small, unmanned drones sent to inspect the summit, where the original capstone is missing, have had their electronics completely fried upon approach. They simply drop from the sky. The international consortium of scientists is now in a state of quiet panic. They have sealed the Giza plateau to the public under the pretense of a major new excavation and restoration project. The perimeter is guarded not by tourist police, but by the Egyptian military. The world sees news reports of a new dig. But on the ground, a frantic effort is underway to understand what is happening before it escalates. Every sensor and detector imaginable has been deployed. The data they are receiving is nonsensical, impossible by the laws of known physics. The energy readings are off the charts. The pyramid is not just focusing ambient energy anymore. It appears to be generating it, vast quantities of it. The big void is no longer a void. Muon detectors now show it as a blindingly dense area, as if it has been filled with a superheated, high-energy plasma. The thermal signature of the entire structure has risen by several degrees, and the lines connecting the chambers now glow with the heat of a furnace, visible even to the naked eye at night as a faint, web-like pattern of red light pulsing just beneath the surface of the stones. The sound is the most terrifying aspect. It is no longer just a hum, it is evolving. It has become a complex symphony of frequencies, some deep and resonant, others piercingly high. Audio engineers analyzing the recordings have found patterns within the noise. Complex, repeating mathematical sequences that are not random, it is structured. It is a signal, or perhaps it is language. The governments of the world are watching in secret. Satellite-based sensors, both military and civilian, are aimed at Giza. They see a colossal energy source powering up, a beacon that is beginning to shine not just in the visible spectrum, a dull, crimson glow, but across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. It is broadcasting, but to where, or to what? Theories are flying in the lockdown command center established near the Sphinx. Is it a weapon, finally arming itself after a 400-500-year slumber? Is it a communication device, sending a message to its long-departed creators that their instrument is once again active? Or is it something far stranger? Some physicists have revisited the most outlandish theories, the ones involving stargates and dimensional portals. They point to the immense gravitational and electromagnetic distortion the pyramid is now generating, warping the very fabric of space-time in its immediate vicinity. They theorize that the pyramid is not a power plant in the sense of generating electricity, but in the sense of generating a stable, traversable wormhole. It is not designed to send a message, but to open a door. Last night, the escalation reached a new and final stage. The complex, multi-layered sound coalesced, it unified into a single, pure, deafening tone. It is a note of such power and clarity that it shatters glass for miles around. It is a sound that feels like it is not just entering the ear, but rewriting the mind. All electronic communication within a 50-mile radius has ceased. The power grid in Cairo has collapsed. The only active electronics are the hardened, fiber-optic linked instruments within the command center. And one other device, the small, shielded camera of the Jetty project's final robot, which has sat dormant for years, pressed against the second blocking stone deep within the northern shaft of the Queen's chamber. In the chaos of the command center, as scientists and military officials reeled from the sheer sonic power being unleashed, a junior technician, on a hunch, reactivated the robot's camera feed. 4 hours, the image was the same as it had been a decade ago, the rough-hewn face of the second blocking stone, a dead end. But then, as the single, overwhelming tone from the pyramid reached its crescendo, the stone on the monitor began to glow with faint red lines, mirroring the patterns on the pyramid's exterior. It was not a door to be pushed or drilled. It was part of the circuit. And then, without a sound other than the overwhelming drone that filled the air, the stone did not open, it did not slide or pivot. With a smooth, impossible motion, it retracted. It was pulled back into the darkness behind it. For the first time in 4,500 years, the way was clear. The camera, its lens coated in ancient dust, peered into the blackness beyond. The field was grainy, distorted by the immense energy flooding the pyramid. But the image was unmistakable. The shout did not continue. It opened into a vast, non-Euclidean space that the camera's logic could not properly process. And from the absolute darkness beyond, 2 points of light ignited, staring back at a world that was no longer listening, but being spoken to.